All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's amazing to be here on Friday afternoon with Ben. Ben, as some of you may know, is the Enterprise Architect in Residence, and we are starting a new series as of today, as of this minute, as of right now, where we're going to regularly do a little bit of AI insight, where Ben's going to share what he's working on or something that he's found useful in the hope that it is useful for you too. So I'm going to get educated today. Let's see what's going on. It's not like I'm using this kind of stuff every day. Me, I'm a perplexity guy, right? I'm kind of all the way over there, and it's very easy to do. But Ben, what are you going to show us today?
Hi, thank you. I wanted to show running large language models on your local machine, essentially. So we've been using some of the technology I'll go through today in building AI chatbots and in AI enhanced search capabilities for some of our clients. And in particular, recently we've been implementing what's called Retrieval Augmented Generation, so RAG capabilities, which has been the driver for the use of some of these tools.
Hang on a sec,
Um,
Ben. Bearing in mind, my kind of coding skills are in Ada and Fortran and this kind of stuff. Okay, retrieval. What now? What are you calling this?
yeah, so it's not our term, and it's a regret of the people that did come up with this. So it was some researchers at Meta that came up with a bit of a fudge or a hack or a technique for want of for want of a better word, whereby you can give additional context to an LLM, to a large language model, and then get it to answer, but purely based on that information that you've provided. So it's a way of giving an LLM your own data at runtime without having to retrain or fine tune the models, which is expensive and time consuming.
Okay.
So a lot of it is used with complementing technology like vector databases and things like that. So you might do a search against a database, retrieve some related information, send that into the LLM as a context, and then ask it to generate some content with that augmented information to summarize that response or write something different. And that's the basis of a lot of how these customized chatbots work.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
That's okay, no problem. Yeah, these things will run through. So they can be they can be used to provide more advanced search capabilities as well as chatbots, but also just to get an LLM to converse using your own data that you provide. Um, we won't be going into the actual sort of details of RAG implementation today. Like I said before we started recording, it's something that I'd like to explore in sort of future sessions. But this is the sort of cornerstone, and using this technology and this session as a start, we can then build on that to sort of go a bit deeper into some of these other areas.
Okay.
Fantastic. This is Ollama. Ollama is one of a few different ways of getting large language models to run on your own machine. It runs on Mac, Linux, and Windows. My machine is a Linux machine. Um, if you did rent a server, spin up an AWS EC2 instance, or you accessed a AI sandbox server, this is almost certainly one of the tools that you could run. So if you don't have a reasonably powered machine, there's lots of other opportunities to run these things. I've not actually gone through and tried this on a Raspberry Pi yet, but some of the Pi 5 versions with some of the smaller LLMs, it should fit within that.
And would you say, Ben, that this is the kind of thing that a non-technical founder is going to need to that can do, or do you think you need to be a technical founder, or you can be somewhere in between the two, like a non-technical founder with a bit of skill?
I'd say on the surface it feels quite technical, but it isn't that technical. So the Windows installation is just download the file and run it. It doesn't even need admin permissions, and then it will download the images. Sorry, the actual model images is what I mean. So you can load different images through that. So if it feels technical, I'd say absolutely give it a go. The benefits that this thing could give you about building this into your day-to-day workflows can be really, really interesting and really, really useful. So I'd say,
and you're keeping this on your local machine, right? So this is not leaking information
No.
anywhere else. This is staying right where, okay, there's not like a back channel that's sending stuff over to Meta at the same time, and you're going to get some nice extra ads on your laptop next time you log in or anything. This is all just for you.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, these things are designed to work in air-gapped environments, and yeah, no callbacks and things as well. So
Okay.
yeah, that's the idea. So really, I'll blast through a lot of this stuff. There's some really good videos that are on YouTube from Ollama that cover all of the installation processes. So I won't repeat any of that. I'll kind of zoom a bit further into some of the models and other bits and pieces. There's a bit of some really interesting politics and philosophical debates happening around closed models and open or local models that you can use. So companies like IBM and Meta are championing local models and some open source models, particularly by IBM. And some of those include IBM Granite, and Meta put out Llama, which has got a very, very similar name to Ollama. We'll be talking about Llama today, and there's a few different flavors. But the frontier models provided by OpenAI and Anthropic include things like ChatGPT and Claude. Obviously, that's available as a service. You need an internet connection, and there's some really interesting things where if an LLM returns an answer that is correct English and it sounds right, but it's factually incorrect, that's called a hallucination. And you can change your prompts to say, if you don't know, just say. But if you don't include something like that in your prompt, these things have been designed to always try and give an answer, even if they're not factually correct. And using the frontier models as a service, we've experienced it where the rate of the likelihood and rate of hallucinations increases during periods of load. So when America come online, the actual accuracy of the responses can degrade, which is really, really interesting if you're looking to have reliable and repeatable results from these things. And
a bit of like the equivalent of asking you a question when you're tired, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great great analogy, and it is that they just get tired. You know, we're asking too much of them at that period of time. It's got to give us an answer within reasonable response time, so it just tries to give you something. So yeah, very, very much like it's getting tired. So yeah, this is a way to avoid that, and I'll go through some of the other considerations and why you might want to play and have a look at local models as well in a second. So Ollama's got loads and loads of different models that you can install, and they're all installed in the same way. Llama from Meta has come out with quite a lot actually since the end of last year, and a lot of them are advancements in the field and progression of the model itself, but also some of them have been built to run on lesser hardware, and some of these models are monstrous in size. So we'll be using Llama 3.1, which has got some quite nice variation in sizes. So the Bs here are about billion parameters. That's all much better explained in other videos and things, but essentially the sort of working applicability of that is the more parameters, the better the model, but the more hardware it needs. And the 405B, the 405 billion parameter model, needs about 260 gig of RAM to run. So it's massive. You know, it won't run on any consumer hardware at all.
Okay.
Similar to the 70B, what you see here is the actual file size. So when you pull these images, when you download these models through Ollama, this is the disk space that it will use, which is quite big in itself. It will need more memory than here, more VRAM than this. So the 8B model, which I'll show you in a minute, does run on this laptop. It's Ollama will split the model between my CPU and GPU, so it's using some of the system memory, all of the GPU memory. This laptop's got a 4 gig GPU in it, and you get answers in.
And that's not standard off the shelf stuff at the moment, right? Having a 4 gig GPU in it.
It's kind of a reasonable development machine would have a graphics card of that kind of size. A gaming machine would have a larger one. If you've got a desktop PC, you can get pretty old, pretty cheap graphics cards that are around that kind of level.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to have it. You don't have to have a GPU of that size. The big difference tends to be speed of responses. So if you're playing with stuff on your own machine, you're not going to have the same user expectations as someone using a website. So you can get away with playing with things on lesser hardware, and waiting longer for the answers as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's different flavors. If you go to the Ollama website, clicking on this is a good sort of indicator, but be aware that the memory sizes are increased from this. And that works for all of the models. So Llama 3.3 starts at 70B, so that's, you're looking at like probably about 50 gig of memory. That'll eat all of my RAM and start going into my swap disk, and my laptop won't be very happy and we'll be waiting a very long time. But it will probably give you more better answers. And again, this is the new state-of-the-art model from Llama, and this is supposed to have similar performance compared to the 3.1405. So that's going, this is a 43 gig image, it's not a 240 gig image, and it's supposed to give similar performance. So it's really interesting how the dials are tweaking on a lot of this stuff. So without further ado, so if you download Ollama, it will run as a service on your machine. I run it in the foreground. You don't have to. This output down here is what would be logged from the server that runs, or if you're running it in the foreground, you can just see it's there. Again, not needed at all. So all you do to run Ollama is you use Ollama command. So this is on the terminal. This is Xterm on Linux. It would work the same as a terminal on Mac. It would work with CMD or command in Windows, or PowerShell in Windows as well. So whatever you're using, open up a terminal that you can type, follow in the successful installation. You should be able to just reuse these commands and they'll run. So you can list the images that are currently on your machine with LS. So this is everything that I've been playing with. You can pull a new image by just going Ollama pull. So if I wanted to pull in that 3.3 image, I could just go Llama 3.3, and that's now downloading that one. I'll cancel it because we don't need to use that one today. Ollama PS shows you the images that are currently loaded, and I'll show you another output of that in a minute once I've actually run it. And there's various other commands. As a slight aside, the file system that is the basis of these images is based on Docker, and there's a lot of similarities in some of these broader commands that match Docker as well. So if you've got experience with any kind of container administration, then there's some similar territory there as well. So I'm going to run Llama 3.1. And that's it. So that's now the equivalent of having the chat prompt, but on my local machine. So I can now start to interact with it. And you can see that the responses come back within a reasonable time frame. There's different commands that you can use to interact with this. So you can clear the chat history, you can log out, you can do other bits and pieces. So I will clear this and then say hello again.
It's so polite.
And I am doing this intentionally, repeatedly for a few times. So something that I found really interesting before starting to play with these things locally and having the ability to actually, pick apart, get a lot closer to the technology and develop a more intuitive feel of how it works, it's often the case that when you're interacting with these LLMs, that when you give it the same question or the same prompt, it gives you a different answer or a slightly different answer. Now, if you're looking to use these things within a process or as part of your application or system, that kind of bucks the trend of traditional software development, where systems and computers have been designed, if you give it the same input, it gives you the same output. The ability for LLMs to give different answers based on the same input is actually been done intentionally. Within Ollama, there's a parameter called temperature. Now, so if you set the temperature to be 0, then it will always give you the same answer for the same prompt or for the same question. And I found that really interesting. So if you are starting to use this as part of a process, or you're exploring the use of this technology as something you want to add to your app or your system, then I'd say definitely set the temperature to 0, because then you get more of a feel for the kind of answers it's going to give you without that randomness in there. So the reason that I asked hello multiple times and I cleared the context every time is now when I ask hello, you can see above my first one, the first 2, it gave me a similar answer. The second one was the much shorter version. I've seen variations where this has got some different commas in different places, but it's essentially the same. Whereas now, every time we do it, it'll give us the same answer. So that's something that I'd definitely recommend to do if you're playing with it.
Fantastic.
Equally, you can set the temperature to 1 or to 0.9, and then you've increased the randomness of how, of the different answers that it will give you.
Not going to come back to you in German or French or something like that. It's always going to be in English, right?
I think it will generally be in English. Yes. It's more around how it wants to word the response to give it some sort of different flavor, and that stuff is set. So similar to again with Docker and Docker files, these Ollama and similar systems, they've come up with the concept of model files, which is a way that you can build these models that you download. You can customize some of these parameters with a custom model file, which is a way that you can create a slightly tweaked version. And all of that's on the Ollama website and the source repositories that it links to. I think the default temperature for Llama 3.1 is 0.8. So it's got quite high.
So a little bit of variation.
Yeah, quite high default.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was that one. And then sort of from here on in, you can use it for whatever you'd use an off the shelf like a online frontier model for. So I'll go through some of the use cases and do a bit more of a demonstration, but just some of the reasons why you might want to consider looking at this stuff is like
Ben, we're going to have to call time on this one for today. Just keep the insights a little bit tighter for people to digest. But when we come back into the next one in a week's time or a couple of weeks' time, we can look at this a bit more, right? So I think the biggest single thing you're saying to everybody is it's possible to do something in your own way on your own laptop, right? And what you've just talked us through is something I think I'd be prepared to give a go to as a semi-technical founder. So I think that's probably open to an awful lot of people who are looking at this to go and give it a try.
Yeah, I'd say definitely give it a go. And we've been really, really impressed. Kind of writing it off of going, the frontier models must be where it's at because of the marketing and everything else. But these things do give really, really, really good answers. And I mean, we were writing a proposal for a pretty small job this morning. Wanted a bit of expedition, a quicker way of writing some non-functional requirements to go onto the proposal. Llama actually did a better job than ChatGPT that instance.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so yeah, really interesting. I'd say definitely have a play.
So this has been the first of the AI Insights with Ben, and you should come back to the channel for some more of these in the future. We're going to keep showing you different things that we see. We're going to have a look at startups that we think are really interesting that are in this space. We're going to do some practical tips like this today and just do a bit of explore, right, Ben, and share the wealth, share the knowledge that's in your head with everybody, because this stuff is so relevant today and it's moving so quickly. I think if we did an episode every day for the next year, we probably still wouldn't be able to keep up, right? So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
things today. That's magic. Thanks, mate. Happy Friday to everybody.
Thank you. Take care.